In this video, we are going to talk about foregrounding and sources of foregrounding. This topic is really important for students of bachelor's and master's who are studying stylistics, literary criticism, discourse analysis, and linguistics. So without wasting any time, we will first of all look into the detail or some of the definitions of foregrounding. Foregrounding is a literary technique that is implied in order to draw attention to a specific part. When we have to draw attention to a specific part of a novel, short story, in any other literary or non-literary work, then we use certain strategies or certain stylistic devices in order to draw attention of the reader or of the listener to that specific part. And we can have those stylistic devices by following the norms of poetry, or by following the norms of any writing, or by deviating from those norms. People who wish to investigate the value and significance of art concentrate on the element of interest and surprise. How we can surprise the reader, or how we can create interest in any text. We are going to show you a number of different examples, and you would find out simply within a single line we could have a whole theme rather than on the automatic pattern. So foregrounding is the opposite of automatization. This concept was also taken from Russian formalists, and this concept was also given by like John McCroskey, Roman Jacobson, or Victor Shklovsky. And they said that our literature has to be opposite of automatization, that we has to de-automatize an act, de-automatize our text, de-automatize the thinking of the listener or of the reader. The more an act is automatized, the less it is consciously executed, or you could say that the more it is foregrounded, the more completely conscious does it become. Now there are some other definitions, like foregrounding is a literary device that emphasizes ideas and symbols through the use of attention-seeking linguistic techniques. So we can use, either we can repeat those techniques, or we can break the patterns, or we can break the linguistic norms. The phenomena of linguistic highlighting, whereby some features of language of text stand out in some way that they become prominent in comparison to other features. Any process of making something central and prominent figure. It is a concept much used in stylistics. Foregrounding occurs upon any deviation from the normal resources of language found in text. The deviation could be, you could take those deviation according to any level of language, that it could be phonological, grammatical, graphological, so they can vary as well. Okay, now what is the purpose of foregrounding? First of all, I have told you that we need to create interest. Secondly, in order to de-automatize the text, so the reader could get to know what is there, and the reader should have a surprise in the text as well. Other than this, we need to it is used to sharpen readers' vision and understanding of the events, feelings, circumstance, concept, and so on. It causes more thorough processing of the text. It lets us to think. It is the linguistic strategy of calling attention to a particular part in comparison to the whole text. Foregrounding in language is the bringing of a particular textual feature that departs from the linguistic norm to prominence. So now the basic purpose of this presentation is to talk about the sources of foregrounding, and those are repetition, deviation, interpretation, and parallelism. Repetition and parallelism are somewhat related, but we have categorized them separately. So if you have a long question, you could have a good material in order to get good grades. Okay, what is repetition? You simply say that repetition is the repetition of something, like words, or repetition of some structure. So repetition is a vital part of language in both literary and non-literary texts. At a more particular level is used for why we use repetition in order to amplify or emphasize what we want to convey. So simply, if we just take the example of William Wordsworth's opening line to Tintin Abbey, where the word 5 occurs 3 times in 1.5 lines, you will notice that 5 years have passed, 5 summers with the length of 5 long winters. William Wordsworth was away from his village, or you could say was away from Tintin Abbey, a rural area, and he has been in any urban area, and it was not good for him, and he did not enjoy that environment. That is why he was even measuring the winters and summers that he has already spent in Tintin Abbey, and for how long he has been absent from there. So 5 years have passed. So this is amplified. We have got to know that William Wordsworth have love for the nature or have love for this place. Other than this, consider some figures of speech in which lexical items are repeated, like you could say chiasmus, fair is foul and foul is fair. You could be shocked. How is it possible? Anaphora, I came, I saw, I conquered. This is most famous from Julius Caesar. We are using the same pronoun I. Now the second type source of foregrounding is, the first source was repetition, repetition of structures, or you could say repetition of certain devices, like, or you could say so repetition of lexical choices. But in deviation we break, or we follow the non-standard or unconventional use of language, and we break the norms of the language. Norms can vary according to the context, culture, and social norms of any speech community. So the norms vary from speech community to speech community. So deviation would be when we move away from those norms. And those deviations can be lexical, grammatical, graphological, or phonological, and semantic as well. And these deviation, why we do these deviation? In order to draw attention to a message, to create a specific effect, or to challenge the standard norms, or to convey a different meaning altogether. Okay, now first of all we will talk about lexical deviation. Lexical deviation simply deal with how do we form a word, and what patterns do we follow while forming a word of a particular language. So I'm talking about English, so we will talk about those, or how do we form a new word. हम एक नया लफ्ज़ कैसे बना सकते हैं, या हम कैसे एक टोटली जो उन पैटर्न्स को फॉलो करना रहा हो उससे भी हम कैसे नया, पर बेसिकली इसमें नियोलॉजिज्म आ गया. तो नियोलॉजिज्म इज द इन्वेंशन ऑफ न्यू वर्ड्स. Over here we have some example: webinar, malware, and branch. Now let us look at some of the types of neologism blend words, in which we combine two different words, or you could say we take the first part, first consonants of the first word and the last consonants with the vowel of the second word, and we have a new word. Like smoke and fog, we combine, we have smog. Breakfast and lunch, we have a new word, brunch. Derivation, it is a word formation process in which we add affixes in order to form a new word. For example, if we just say appear, disappear, as we have just added prefix, and after that prefix we have a new word. Justice, injustice, again we have a new word. Sorry. Or you could say that we say, if we just add fy suffix, because these examples are of prefix, then we could have justify. Clipping, in which we reduce or shorten a word without changing the exact meaning. For example, photograph, we reduce it to photo. Influenza to flu. We have the same, we have the different words with different pronunciation, but they have the same meaning. Compounding, when we combine two words without shortening them, as we did in blending, then we have a new, like classroom, class plus room, classroom, slide plus show, slideshow. Then we have conversion, when we convert one grammatical form into another grammatical form, or you could say that when we change the function of one word, grammatical function of one word, into another grammatical function, as we used to use Google as a noun, but now it is used as a verb as well. So I think so it would be clear what is conversion. जब हम उसका function जो है grammatical function change कर दें, that is called conversion. Back formation, in which we remove certain suffixes from another word, or you could say we just shorten the word from a longer word. That is called back formation. Over here I think so this example is wrong. We need to just, this is fine, edit from editor, and we always mostly have a verb when we short that word. Edit from editor, televise from television. Acronym. Acronym is a popular word formation in which we use an initial word, but when we have some initial words, when we combine those, we can pronounce a new word. That is called an acronym. And abbreviation is when we use the initial word, but when we pronounce it, we cannot pronounce it as a new word. For example, LAD, language acquisition device. Over here, la sound, a sound, and da sound have been used, or you could say these letters or alphabets have been collected because we take an initial alphabet or initial word, but we can pronounce this word lad. But in abbreviation we cannot pronounce these words. Then there are certain words that are that we have borrowed from other languages, but we translate those words as Übermensch. We have translated this word in English as Superman, Biergarten as beer garden. Other than that, there is borrowing, that we use the word as it is without changing or without translating it into our language, as we have borrowed algebra from Arabic and murder from French. Sorry. Then we have grammatical deviation, second type of deviation, grammatical when we do not follow syntactic patterns, or when we deviate and move away the syntactic pattern of any language, as we are dealing with English, that would be called grammatical deviation. Sorry, I does not like him over here. I should have used I don't like him, but this is wrong, and by this we have caught the attention of the reader and listener as well, and this would enforce the reader to read on. He, me, saw, again grammatical error. Saw you anything, you saw anything, we should have used like that, but over here we have used grammatical deviations in order to catch the attention of the reader or listener. Phonological deviations, when we move away from the phonological patterns, that is called phonological deviation. This can be achieved through omission, that is called elision. There are conventional licenses, and why poets usually used to do this, because they have to follow the pattern of rhythm, or they have to follow the pattern of rhyming scheme. That is why they used to do, and they have the license for that as well. Now, what is omission? Omission is dropping of sounds, or you could simply say it is ellipsis. And if we drop or omit the sound from the initial part, this is called emphasis, as we have amid, alone, we have dropped the sound. Syncope, the omission of medial part, never, over. We have dropped epicope, the omission of the final part, that is called epicope. So this is called omission. And now if you just look at this example by Robert Burns, the red road, red rose, he has done this in order to match the pattern that he is following. That is why he has omitted certain words. Till all, first omission, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of, we should have use of, life shall run. Now, special pronunciation, we create special pronunciation in order to achieve the effect of rhyme, or again you could say rhythm as well. And in this, in these verses, P.B. Shelley has done that. Now we are going to move toward graphological deviation, and that deals with graphemes. And what is graphological deviation can be taken as language does not consider the rules of punctuation, capitalization, parenthesis, and jumbling of words with numbers and so on. And for this, E. Cummings is so famous for graphological deviation. As you just see his one of his poetic texts, and you will find out how much graphological deviations he has followed. Collision. First of all, we have to start the poetic text or any verse with the capital letter, but he hasn't done that. After that, he needs to use a comma, colon, something like that. But again, he hasn't done that. Collision, collapse, as. No, this word has to be shortened, but he has made it he has capitalized it, and do not use small alphabet over here. Peacefully lifted into the awful beauty of sunset, the young city. So in this example, you have found number of graphological deviations, and you could memorize it for your exams as well. Semantic deviation describes the ambiguity of phrases. When our ambiguous phrases or our sentences are ambiguous, then we have semantic deviation, and it is used in order to convey different meanings, or in order to catch the attention of reader, and the meanings can vary from context to context. And some major components of semantic deviation include paradox, irony, and metaphor. Child is the father of man, William Wordsworth. How could the child be the father of man? Beauty is truth, John Keats, and truth is beauty. How is it possible? This could be a paradoxical statement, or you could say this is chiasmus. She was a phantom of delight. How? First of all, the woman is living. Secondly, she is a phantom. Thirdly, how could a phantom be a source of delight? So these statements are ambiguous. Now we are going to move toward third source of foregrounding. Before that, we have discussed repetition and deviation. Now we are going to talk about interpretation. Foregrounding occurs when any deviation from the normal resources of language is found in a literary text. The deviation may be a matter of grammar, metaphor, or any other figure of speech, and interpretation is the act of explaining the meaning and effect of a literary text or foregrounding. So in interpretation, this source of foregrounding lets us to explain the meaning and effect of any device of foregrounding. So it basically deals with the interpretation of deviation. There are three sources of it. When deviation communicates something, when our deviation communicates something, then we have, you could say, foregrounding. For example, my aunt suffers from terrible authorities. Instead of saying terrible arthritis, as you know, this is one of the problem, or you could say malapropism, and Richard Sheridan, I think so, in his novel has talked about this. And what is malapropism? Mistaken use of word in place of similar sounding words. Now we have to consider why the author, or why the sayer, or why the speaker has used that sentence, and why he has used authorities instead of arthritis. Might be he was offended, or he was facing some troubles or pressure from the authorities, and she was not liking. That is why the word has been used. And other than that, it also tells us about the character and education of the sayer as well. Now the next example was like you play. This example simply tells us about the grammatical pattern of a foreigner who has not a good command on English. One deviation communicates what was intended by its author. And you know, this is very difficult to know the intention of the author, and if the author is even that, then it is too so much difficult. And when it communicates what was intended by the author, or when our interpretation varies from the author, then there could be a source of foregrounding as well. Like as in Waiting for Godot, readers and critics felt that Godot meant God, but Beckett said that by Godot he never meant a god. So this would lead to a different interpretation. This would lead the readers to think differently from multiple point of views. So here foregrounding is used when it is judged by the reader to be significant, when they find that any event in the text is significant, and it would be shocking for them how it was possible, and how the author of the text has arranged those events. Lastly, now we are going to move toward the last and most important source of foregrounding, and that is parallelism. It refers to using similar words, clauses, phrases, sentence structures, or other grammatical items or elements to emphasize similar ideas. When we want to emphasize similar ideas, we use these similar words, clauses, or phrases. These parallels are used to intensify the rhythm of language, or to draw a comparison, emphasize, or elaborate an idea. Now you have already read this adage: give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a long time. You would say how parallelism has been used in this sentence. First of all, give a man a fish. A man to fish. First of all, a man, noun phrase, a fish, noun phrase. A man to fish. Other than that, you feed him for a day. You feed him, again same, for a day. This is again a prepositional phrase, a prepositional phrase. So on the base of phrase, on the base of clause, on the base of words, we have parallel structures, and this simply catch the attention of the listener. Parallel structure in a series. Now there are certain types of it. Parallel structure in a series. Use parallel construction when items in a series have an equal level of importance. These items are usually joined by commas or semicolons. On the first of all, we have parallel words. A noun should be grouped with the nouns. So this is not the case that if we have used a noun and in the next example we should use an adjective, or we should use an adverb. That shouldn't be the case. अगर noun है तो noun के साथ आप लोग noun का इस्तेमाल करेंगे. जैसे this office is looking for a boy who is friendly, organized and punctual. This office is looking for a boy who is friendly, organized and going to arrive early. I think so both of these mean the same thing, but now this wouldn't be considered a parallel structure. Parallel structure, parallel phrases. You could use parallel phrases And other than that, you could use parallel clauses as well. This is wrong, you need to write parallel clauses. Let me just sum up, because I think so the video is getting longer. Parallel clauses, when the result card stated that the student often talked in class, that he bullied other students and rarely finished his work. The result card stated that the student often talked in class, bullied other students and rarely finished his work. If you just see, we have used that over here, and if we have used that over here, we need to use it over here as well. But in this sentence, we just have used the complementizer over here, and after that we haven't used it in the upcoming classes. That is why it is called a parallel a sentence with the parallel clauses. Why? Because we do not have used that and that and that again. If this structure would be fine, then we have to use that over here as well. Less after, if we have less after a colon, we can use parallel structure again, as mainstream economists have attributed the recession to several key causes: deregulation policies, spike in interest rates, manufacturing orders declining, and the emergence of asset bubbles. But over here, if you just see deregulation policies, high interest rates, low manufacturing orders, and high asset bubbles, or you could simply say and asset bubbles. Do you find any particular pattern? Yes. First of all, deregulation policies, noun phrase. Spike in interest. First of all, if you just say that, this would be a different thing. Why? Because we have mixed an adjective or prepositional phrase with the noun as well. And then the emergence of asset bubbles. Again, the emergence, noun phrase and adjective phrase mixed into a noun phrase. But in the next example, we have used the same phrases. Parallel construction in pairs as well, so you could use all these. Now parallelism could also be used with the figures of speech as well, as parallelism and antithesis. In antithesis, an element that are placed in contrast, that is a one small step for a man and one giant leap. Over here, if you would say the words are different, but again, if you just find out this is small is an adjective, step is a noun, so parallelism is there according to the structure. Parallelism and anaphora, when we repeat the certain words at the start, or you could say in the beginning, we shall fight on the seas, we shall fight on beaches. And this is the most famous speech of Winston Churchill that he conveyed, or that he done in order to convince Americans to fight First World War. Parallelism and ascendant, I came, I saw, I conquered, in which we have omitted different parts of a sentence, or you could say conjunctions. Parallelism and epistrophe, in which we repeat the words at the end of the phrases, the most famous definition of democracy. So now you have found out that in some of our definitions, in the most famous quotes, in the most famous lines, we have used different sources of foregrounding. And if you have any question or any query, you can type in the comment box. And but for that, you have to like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much.